Hey guys. Okay, so here we have your second passage of the week. It is titled From Walking with the Wind. And we know if it says from at the beginning of the title, that means what? It's an excerpt, right? It's a part of a story from a larger story. They just pulled maybe a chapter or a couple of pages out of a story that's a bigger piece of work, okay? All right, so here we go. Let's get started. John Lewis was first elected as a U.S. Congressman from the state of Georgia in 1986. In his memoir, Walking with the Wind, he describes growing up in the South under a cruel system of racial segregation and eventually becoming a leader of the civil rights movement. All right, so with that, that's the background information, and I can infer from the title that Walking with the Wind is probably, with me, when I'm thinking about and I've read the introduction, the background information, I'm going to say Walking with the Wind is going to be a person who kind of just goes with the flow of things, like how stuff goes, like you're walking with it, you just kind of take it as it goes. He's not pressing it or going against the grain. He's just taking it the way that it is. All right, so let's start reading. Again, I'm going to read to you guys the first two chapters, first two paragraphs, and then we'll talk about it, what we think that means, and then you guys can continue on reading from there and then answer the questions that follow. I will be starting up. We'll start having some Zoom Hangout stuff. Y'all know I'm not into the technology, but I'm getting there. So where you guys can actually log in and we can have like virtual conversations if you guys have questions about the assignments that you did not understand. Okay, so let's go ahead and get this story started. All right. On this particular afternoon, it was a Saturday. I'm almost certain. About 15 of us children were outside my Aunt Savina's house, playing in her dirt yard. The sky began clouding over. The wind started picking up. Lightning flashed far off in the distance. And suddenly, I wasn't thinking about playing anymore. I was terrified. I had already seen what lightning could do. I'd seen fields catch on fire after a hit to a haystack. I'd watched trees actually explode when a bolt of lightning struck them. The sap inside rising to an instant boil. The trunk swelling until it burst into bark. The sight of those snips of pine barks snagging through the air like ribbons was both fascinating and horrifying. All right, so from that, I would look back at that paragraph and I would pick out, first I would look at, there's a couple of keywords that we would probably have to go back and make sure that we understand and familiarize ourselves with. And you guys are very good at finding those keywords, those uncommon words we don't necessarily use every day in our vocabulary. The only one that I could maybe see that you guys could probably try to pick out, maybe the fascinating, but we know what fascinating means. Those words were all pretty standard in that paragraph. We know that it tells us that the author was terrified, but he's terrified about his surroundings. So if I'm going to make an annotation, I'm going to say kid playing when storm started to come, or the weather changed. Excuse me. So that's what he's talking about, how he was outside playing and then all of a sudden the weather started to change. So we probably can infer that weather is going to impact his day. Okay. And his background knowledge of lightning and what it can do. All right. Lightning terrified me, and so did thunder. My mother used to gather us around whenever we heard thunder and tell us to hush. But be still now, because God was doing his work. That was what thunder was, my mother said. It was the sound of God doing his work. All right, so in paragraph 2, what I would read from that is that what they did when it started to potentially storm. So his mom, he said that whenever it was thundering outside, because we know if there's thunder, there has to be what? Lightning somewhere. And so that is an indication that the storm and the lightning was going to come. So he said whenever there was thunder, they all had to be really quiet, sit down and gather around their mom. And then, because what was the reasoning why she said they had to do that? Because she said God was doing his work. Okay, so you guys are going to continue on reading paragraphs 3 all the way down through 16. It's not long because some of these are very short paragraphs, as you guys can tell. So read those, do your annotations. There are questions at the end, and you guys can just answer those 8 questions. Submit your answers back to me, and looks like we got ourselves a completed assignment. Okay, alrighty, till the next one.